Welcome to yet another session where we explore intentional inclusion, investigating equitable education and intersection in education technology. And here we have Nicole Ponsford, who's going to be taking us through this amazing discussion. Okay, before we start, this session examines how educational technology can support intersectional inclusion in schools. She is the founder of GEC and doctoral research. She will address the challenges of capturing life's experiences in education and the ethical concern associated with traditional methods, highlighted the gap between schools, leaders' experiences, and the diverse need of their students. Ponsford will explore how EdTech can bridge this divide. This session will discuss how technology can address cultural blind spots, reduce student absenteeism, and improve staff recruitment and retention, ultimately fostering a more inclusive environment. So just a quick one to my fellow audience. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the Q&A section. And for any comments, use the comment section. Thank you. So Nicole Ponsford.
Hi there.
All right.
All right, shall we get started then?
Yes, please.
No problem.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Nick Ponsford and I am here to talk to you about intentional inclusion and investigating equitable education and intersectional edtech. Essentially, I'm going to be taking you through the work that I've been doing over the last few years, and through this session you can join me on sharing the insights, my questions. I've got a couple of answers along the way, and then hopefully at the end we'll be able to have further discussion around this as well. So who am I and how am I able to talk about this? Well, my name is Nick, as I said, and I started teaching back in 2000. I've been in education 24 years now. I started off as a teacher and then a head of department, a school leader. I then worked as an advanced skills teacher, which meant I worked across schools, then for an educational charity. And since then, in the last 14 years or so, I've been working nationally and internationally in education. Essentially, all my work is based around two elements. One, people and being a very people-centered approach in education, and then two, technology for good. So how can we harness digital skills, digital pedagogy and digital mindset when it comes to inclusion to ensure that we have an equality of offer when it comes to our young people and our families. So most of the time when people see me, they might see this on the outside of what I'm doing. I've been very fortunate to be asked to write for several news outlets. I've also won awards, and I'm currently a doctoral researcher at Bournemouth University here in England. But before I started that, I was a teacher. I was an English teacher and brought in digital media. When I worked in England, I worked in the south of England, and I tended to work in the schools where there was most deprivation and help support the young people I had before me to be themselves and to be seen for who they were as well. And really, the reason I did this is because when I was a young person myself, I felt that school was my safe place. And essentially, my journey through education has been trying to ensure that all of our young people, our staff and our families also feel that sense of safety in school. Essentially, what I've been trying to look at is how we really better understand all the people we have in our building. So if you imagine an inclusive school, rather like a geometric kaleidoscope, each student, each member of staff represents a unique geometric shape. So we've got hexagons, triangles, circles and stars. Traditional systems in education might try to arrange these shapes into a fixed pattern. But in an inclusive school where staff, students and families are seen, where they feel safe, where they have a sense of being welcome and wanted, where they have a sense of belonging, the kaleidoscope constantly adapts and shifts to celebrate the ever-changing, vibrant patterns created by our diverse shapes. And every term of the kaleidoscope reveals a new and beautiful design, symbolising how each and every one of our people's individuality enhances our dynamic and inclusive educational environment. Alongside this, we obviously have our physical environments and how this helps shape us. So I'd like you to take a moment now to consider someone you know and how they fit into that school's culture at its best and at its worst. And then I'd like you to take a moment to consider how you have fitted or have not. And why is this? What can we do to better understand this? A lot of this comes down to the connections that we have between and across the people in our culture. So let's go a little bit further. We know that everyone is different, unique. And if we take our students first, we know that not all of our children will fit into our schools. Their shape does not fit into our system. I want to explore now the concept of inclusion in our schools and how we can create environments where every student feels supported and valued, and how we actually need technology to help us do this better than humans can. And to do this, I'm going to borrow a metaphor now involving something soft, sweet, and adaptable, a simple marshmallow. So imagine each student as a marshmallow now. Marshmallows are soft and they adapt to their surroundings, but they need a warmth to expand and thrive, the same way our students need a nurturing and supportive environment to grow. When we talk about creating inclusive classrooms, I'd like you to think about how the warmth that helps our students, our marshmallows, to expand and reach their full potential, and how this involves understanding their diverse needs, providing them with the right kind of support, just as those marshmallows need. We need to think about empathy and understanding, supportive practices, inclusive cultures, and create an environment as supportive as a marshmallow cushion to ensure that our schools become places where every student can grow, adapt, and thrive. And that's because we need empathy and understanding to be aware of each student's unique challenges and strengths. We need supportive practices so we can implement strategies that accommodate different learning styles and needs. And we need an inclusive culture and fostering that classroom culture in particular, where every student feels valued and included, where they feel heard. But that's hard, right? So my research was, how do we do this? How do we do this in a way that is focused on the school leaders, rippling out that support, but also a way that we can evidence that in terms of practice and policy? And that's where my organisation, the Global Equality Collective, or the GEC, started. We started as a grassroots exploration of what was working in education or what was trying to work. And this I wanted to look at wasn't a tokenistic way. So when we think about where I'd come from, when I was a teacher and when I've worked for educational charities, we looked at different models of approach. So when we look at inclusion and diversity and well-being in schools, there's a couple of things that we normally do. So one might be to get a consultant in to do a series of workshops with our staff to train them. Another thing that we might do would be to do an audit to better understand where we think we are now. Next, we might try to capture the voice of our people to understand what their experience is. So this could be focus groups or interviews or quizzes where we kind of understand what's going on. And then the next thing we want to think about is how we upskill, how we train, how we basically ensure there's a consistent model and ecosystem for our schools to understand this and get it right. However, when I started to look at this, and in terms of my doctoral research as well, I realised that we had many issues. And a lot of these are evidence with historical data in education systems around the world which haven't really changed. We can look at things in terms of gender and see how we approach our boys and what the outcomes are, and generally with our girls too. And what I started to see that actually historically we see the same patterns, not just year after year, but decade after decade. And I wanted to see how we could maybe use technology to provide a quality assured centralised solution, something that would work better than we had for the first 100 years of formal education, and start to look at how we could weave technology as we move into the next 100 years of education as well. So the way that I started to do this was starting a doctorate, and I started to map out what was happening from an academic level. On the outside of this as well, I started to put this into practice. So I started to look at what we mean when we talk about inclusion and well-being. And I noticed that across the education system globally, there are a lot of different terms. There's a lots of different legislation out there. So I started to map out what was happening in each country, what we were looking at, what we meant by inclusion, and started to use categorizations and ways that we could identify or label what we were talking about. I then from here, started to then bring in the people that were doing the work out there. So the GEC Collective is a collective of experts. And in fact, we've got the world's largest group, largest directory of EDI experts out there with over 400 individuals and organisations. The GEC Circle helps us better understand what's going on and what's working out there. It is also a way of us networking, bringing those people together. And it is a way of also looking and QAing, quality assuring our GEC platform, which I'll talk to you about in a moment. The GEC Circle at this point, as I say, has over 400 organisations and individuals. They are the ones that are out there doing this both online and in person. And we got so large, we've just maximised our offer so we can really amplify the voices of the people that are doing incredible work out there in education. And you can find out more about that on our website. Alongside doing this work, when I started doing the doctorate in 2018, 2019, and I'd started to go out there and work out and map out the field in terms of the expertise, a few things happened along the way. So one of the first things that happened in March 2020 was in the UK, we went into full lockdown as COVID hit. I was then headhunted and I worked on the EdTech demonstrator programme, where we brought 11,000 schools online as across England, schools closed down beyond those supported for key workers. Once we went back into schools, my work with the Department of Education continued, and I became a programme lead on the assistive technology training for schools, looking at how we could support assistive technology as a pilot and a programme across schools. I still do the work with Microlink. We are offering a fully funded offer for schools who want to get their assistive technology on. So if you would like to know more about that, please contact me after this session. Working at scale like this helped me also understand what was happening in schools when it came to the infrastructure of using technology as well. I learned firsthand, working with thousands of schools, how they had issues when it came to technology, but also what their digital strategies were as a result, and how inclusion was very often at the heart of their work. I was able to bring this together in terms of looking at the people and looking at the technology and bringing it together to create a solution that was really easy for school leaders. And I realised what I was actually trying to address was one of the biggest issues that we have in our schools: inclusion and well-being. Or in another way, the relationships and the impact this has on our people, the attitudes and values we have as educators, and how this impacts on both the decision making and the experiences of others. And when we look at how we address it, it is hard. Just as I started teaching and we had the Google browser came in, we are now having a lot of the same conversations we had then with the use of AI coming into the education system. And when we look at inclusion and belonging, it is hard for school leaders to work out what to do, what kind of approach to take. And then often they don't have time or funding or expertise or contacts to do this. So the GEC is a one-stop shop that school leaders can come to get the expertise they need. So we've got our directory, our circle of experts on one side. The other side was helping them from a clear framework point of view. How do you actually do diversity and inclusion? Now, if you've ever done an electronic search, you will probably be fire hosed with a multitude of frameworks at work and consultants that will come and do one session and turn it all around. However, we know that this isn't the solution and this doesn't work at scale across our schools. So part of the research that I've done, as well as my own with Bournemouth University, I've also worked with several other universities to better understand each aspect of inclusion, diversity and well-being when it comes to bringing in technology. And in fact, not just our circle of experts have supported this, but stakeholders from around the world in schools. And we've also done further pilot studies. So we've really done a deep dive into how things can work. The GC platform has been the way that we can put something into school leaders' hands that will hold their hand and help them better understand what diversity and inclusion mean. So at the same time as we went into lockdown, I was able to get initial funding, which I then did a crowdfund, and we have now got the world's first diversity and inclusion platform. It's called the GC platform. So we know that schools prioritise relationships and connections. We wanted to develop a way that helped the schools prioritise these social capital to support their people on levels which are both micro and macro. We wanted to move from that what you know with who you are to enable schools to move beyond traditional metrics and foster environments where students and staff could feel safe, valued and empowered to thrive. We like to look at something which is called social capital. We have developed this over the years we've worked as a GEC, and also out of my doctoral work, I found that actually what we're talking about when we are thinking about relationships and well-being and EDI is actually a social capital to help schools secure positive relationships, build trust and cultivate a deep sense of belonging within their communities. So as part of my work, I've evolved the social capital framework, which is housed within the GC platform. And this enhances opportunities to deepen connections for everyone in the school, more than just an assembly or an inset day or a training day. This is an ongoing commitment to fostering meaningful, lasting connections. So at the GEC, we do both. We blend our data that we get with our social capital framework with the human connection of those with a lived experience, ensuring that our schools globally across the 30 countries we're in today don't just measure inclusion, but they build it too. So I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about how the GC platform works, and then I'm going to talk to you about social capital. So with our platform at the core, which is all online, we have developed this with data analytics and our academically tested framework to support schools better. And our goal is to create and maintain a safe and simple process to make ordinary classrooms extraordinarily inclusive. We have worked with stakeholders throughout the whole of our journey. So for example, in our student module that we've just built, we work with 50 student councils from around the world, as well as school leaders, teachers, parents, and membership bodies to help us with this alongside the universities. Our participants are key. We need to better understand how we can engage with them, how we can hear their voice to surface up where they may feel underserved. But also we want to understand from a technological point of view, how we can help them engage better than we would with an in-person event. So for example, when I used to run focus groups and interviews, I'd quite often come out of them and be told I couldn't say that because my line manager was in the room. I can't say that because I don't like that teacher. I'm not going to say that to the school because I'm worried about the consequence of my child going there day to day when the school hears my viewpoint. So we wanted to create a psychologically safe space that allows people to really say and share their stories in a way that school leaders can understand this and implement change or celebrate where they're doing a great job in a way that's really easy and manageable for them to do it, in a way that I would have appreciated it when I was a school leader myself. The way that the platform works guides schools through an onboarding system that is very quick and very easy, and the technology does the heavy lifting for them so they can use the time in the best way appropriate to them. We started with individual schools a couple of years ago. We are now working not just with networks of schools, we are working regionally and also nationally as well. So if you are watching this and are in a position and feel like the GEC platform is something that you would like to use to help scale inclusion and wellbeing and diversity across your area or within your school, please get in contact with us via the website. The way that it works is we capture the voices first. So we've got 3 surveys, one for the leadership team as a audit. We then have a student voice and a staff voice that can also be captured. It is designed in a way that we engage. We want to get really reliable data for school leaders. So it's bright, it's colourful, and we've overthought everything. So even the buttons have been designed like bubble wrap, so people want to keep pressing them. Once those surveys have been completed, we unlock the results. And in terms of that, we help with demographical data. We help surface up qualitative and quantitative. We also look at intersectional data. So the tags that you saw earlier, we don't just look at identities in terms of 1 or 2 intersectional identities. We look at it until the data runs out, essentially. We also throw in our coaching recommendations. So you've got your inbuilt coach, which you can add their recommendations to an action plan, which helps you with a roadmap, which is based on evidence to take your progress further. And then just because I always want to know what's next, we have thrown in our Necfus style interactive training hub, which has over 30 days of CPD built into it. We have broken down all of the lived experience of our participant. So in this, we can look at the demographics that you can see here, which we have co-designed with participants. And then we have separate sections to help our school leaders better understand how that social capital breaks down. Once schools get the data, it is illustrated to them in a way that the visualization is really clear, because it is not just about getting the voice of our people. It is not just about having a survey that we've designed with universities, clinical psychologists and EDI experts. It's also crucially important that the school leaders understand the information and the data that they are seeing. We also have no human bias in this. Our technology helped you just to surface up what has gone into it. So you also will see many of our school leaders, when they are leaving reviews and in our case studies, will illustrate that we are helping map what they haven't been able to map before. As you can see with this very quick demo, we map the action to the data, and on our website we've got a host of virtual demonstration videos that you can have a little look at as well. But we want to move from just showing the data into that action. So when our GEC champions start to look at our platform, they can see what's happening, what information they're told about people's experiences, but they also get told why it's important. They can see any stories, any narratives, any lived experiences in the comments, but they can also break those that demographic data down until the data runs out. And the following part from that are our coaching recommendations that they can add to an action plan, and that will then help them understand how they can close any gaps that they may have. And all of this is very quick and very easy, and also very safe and secure for our school leaders to be able to do this. And does it work? Well, yes. I think the fact that we've been able to support the schools and build it with schools themselves and the stakeholders means that the platform has actually transformed many schools' understanding of inclusion, and they see the connection between diversity and the social fabric, the social capital of their schools, which is helping them move things forward. We have got reviews on EdTech Impact. If you'd like to have a look, I'm really pleased to say that they're all 5-star, and that's growing all the time. And that's from our state schools and trusts, our independent schools and our international ones. And in fact, we are now across 30 countries, and that is growing all of the time. As I said, this came from my doctoral piece. So from understanding what equitable education meant, what inclusion and diversity meant, we were able to build the platform, and to understand what that meant in terms of who was doing things out there. That's where our GEC circle comes in as well. And you're right, this gets messy very quickly. When you think about doing a focus group or an interview with maybe even just 5 stakeholders, when you bring in their lived experience and their intersectionality, it can be transformed into hundreds of pages of reports out there. So what I was really keen to do was look at how we can make the technology really work harder than the humans have to, but in a way that we can gain those insights to move from intending to do something to that impact as well. And the state that I'm in at the moment, now that we've surveyed over 22,500 students, staff and teachers, is start to look how we can interrogate that data, but use AI in an ethical way to better understand it. And that's where we are now. One of the things that we do along the way is make sure that we speak to our school leaders using the platform to better understand their experience of doing it and try to understand how we can go to co-design the technology and the experience even further. We also keep a check in what's happening in terms of national-based changes, government changes in particular, but also the different recruitments of underserved leaders when it comes to education and what their feelings are around being a leader with their background and understanding how we can support their culture, both at a leadership level, but also with inside their community as well. We also are very keen to change and evolve. So each year we go back to our GEC champions to ask if we've missed anything or what they would like to see. And we do this with our circle so we can better understand the people and their needs. So now the platform not only supports inclusion and diversity, but we have brought in mental health and well-being and also physical well-being this year. And what have I learned? Well, I've learned that it doesn't matter which country you're in, there are systemic issues across the board when it comes to inclusion in education. There are a variety of ways that we look at measuring this. And in fact, we tend to value what we measure instead of measure what we value. And that's what I'm looking at doing. We have issues around time and legislation, which means technology is a way to shortcut this. And very much the demographic identities above the waterline. So age, racism and sexism are still the focus today. There is a lack of guidance coming for this, and there are still concerns, not just with the staff, but parents and students as well. I also have learned as well, we need a kind of mixed methods approach. We need to use familiar data software for our participants and a real focus on ethics for consent. When it comes to this, we have built in consent to our surveys and looked at things like the ICO digital rights of the child. Many of the surveys we give to our kids are like quizzes. We don't necessarily think about how we're going to roll it out, what their experience of doing a survey is, and then how we provide aftercare. So we've created a whole toolkit for our champions on this as well. And what have we learned? Well, our pilot of about 2,500 students this time last year, we understood that 78% of the children we spoke to didn't feel they had one adult they can talk to. So with a climate when we're looking at things like attendance, safety and well-being, these are huge issues. We've now partnered with For Education, who are looking at how we can use AI as a way of better understanding our work. And we're starting to see real headlines, not only in terms of our data, but how we capture it as well. We initially looked at Power BI, but what we've started to see and started to create our own data room for this is incredible opportunities of how we can understand data across the board. So just before I finish, here's a couple of our headlines that we've learned from surveying 11,000 students in 2023 to 24. So we've learned that boys are about 30% more likely to agree that they belong in school, which is great. So we're starting to see that our boys are benefiting from our work with helping them. But we do seem to be letting the girls down a little bit. So much so that actually 50% of our girls say they do not enjoy learning at school at all, which illustrates a focus for our leaders. We've also started to see through our data, which we'll be sharing soon in reports, illustrations of where we are doing a good job. So we're starting to see why Asian students are more likely to see themselves represented in school. We're starting to see that some students, like our white ones, feel that they do have strong models being put in front of them. And the insights for this will keep growing, and we will be sharing this very, very soon. And so just to finish, what have I learned and what do we want to do next? And what can you do? Well, I would say start to think about your school in terms of social capital framework. Think about the bonding. So this is where people within a demographic group share a particular view and they have a bonding characteristic. When we think about the next group, that's called bridging. So that's how bridging social capital promotes relationships across different demographic identities. This brings in inclusivity and intersectional allyship, as you would know. And this is what we emphasise allows diverse groups to progress together to get ahead in a way that they couldn't achieve alone. Our last part is our linking, and this is crucial in schools. So this is how do leaders support the building and the bonding social capital within their organisation. So this allows networks or individuals to access resources, opportunities and support beyond their immediate circle. So at this point, I think my time's up. So I'm just going to say thank you very much for listening to me. If you'd like to know any more about our work, please pop over to our website. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, let's have a chat. Thanks very much for your time.
Hello, Nick. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you for the presentation. That was so insightful. Wow. I learned so much about inclusivity and intentional inclusion. So we have a couple of questions in the Q&A section. Would you like to take them now? Let me put them
Yep,
up.
absolutely. Just trying to find them. Okay.
Okay.
So great. Hi there, and thank you for popping stuff in the chat. You never know if there's anyone out there or listening. Okay, so from your experience, what are the key challenges in promoting equitable education? How can we come? I think one of the main problems we've got is not just the bias of certain decision makers in education, but the privilege that they have. So they don't always understand how other people may live in a way that is different to them. And that then clouds their own attitudes and values, which has a knock effect on their decisions and therefore the experiences of everyone else. So one of the key challenges I think we have are getting the key decision makers to understand this is a problem and that they are part of a possible solution, but they need to look to the expertise of others in the field that are doing it. So that's what I would say. How do we manage a diverse student community to adopt inclusiveness in their student roles? Great question. The first thing I would say is ask them. So I would capture the student voice in the first way to understand how do they think they're diverse, what do they think they do that helps them to be them or what obstacles there might be. The second thing I would say would be to look at which students you choose to have the voice within your organisation. Many schools will choose a student council, for example, based on their most articulate students. And normally they will have maybe more privilege around them to be that confident or that articulate. So start to think about how your underserved young people have a voice as well, where they fit into the voice of your organisation and how you can help amplify those that may not feel that they are heard or seen as well.
Okay, thank you. So personally, how do I build an inclusive community around me? Because I noticed that so many of there's so many individuals who want to really engage with activities regarding education, but they don't have the resources to manage that. So how do I make sure that each and every individual is properly integrated into the system, whether they have the resources or not? And how can I foster that inclusive mindset for them to properly incorporate those things better?
Well, I would say sign up to a GC, because that's what I've built it all for. So the whole idea of it is where organisations, either they don't know where to start or they feel they're on a journey, can better understand all the voices in their organisation. There's lots of ways that people try to do this, but ultimately they get it wrong. So the whole design of a platform has been based around what could work if an organisation wants to be inclusive. So it's about capturing that voice in the first part and not just asking random questions that you think might be good. Like, we've worked with 5 universities, we've worked with clinical psychologists, we've worked with software experts, and we've worked with EDI experts, and then we've worked with schools in terms of students and parents and teachers and, you know, those out in the field. So it's creating a way of capturing the voice in the most ethical and accessible way. Then it's about how you measure those outcomes, like what are you trying to be told, how do you get told them? Again, that's what we capture. And then it's about identifying a framework for action, having that expertise as well, or like, what do I do now? I've got that data, now I've done that survey, how do I take this forward? What's the best way to do it? And again, that's what our whole offer is about. So I'd say, if you want to get it right, come to us at the GC and we will help you with that. And we do have offers for schools that do need help, obviously, with finance as well. And we've got lots of free resources on our website. We've also got a social media based community where we put lots of ideas and free blogs and videos and ideas with lots of different diverse voices and from our circle. So come join the community, come jump into the website and sign up for the GC platform, and we'll help you on your way.
Definitely, I'll be there. I'll connect in soon. All right. So thanks for the session. I believe that our audience have learned so much about inclusivity and how they can better manage that area. So thank you.
Thank you. And come over to the website and I'll meet you there. Thanks very much.
All right. No problem. Thank you. You see me soon.